Singer-songwriter Jessi Alexander has written 5 songs that hit #1 on country music radio. Jessi's chart-topping hits include I Drive Your Truck, recorded by Lee Brice, which won Song of the Year at the 2013 CMA Awards, 2014 ACM Awards, and 2013 NSAI Awards. Additional number ones include 2 songs recorded by Blake Shelton, Mine Would Be You and Drink on It. As if that isn't impressive enough, Jessi's career skyrocketed with her song The Climb. Miley Cyrus recorded the song, and it soon became the anthem for her box office hit, The Hannah Montana Movie, and won the 2009 MTV Movie Awards Best Song from a Movie. Jessi celebrated her most recent #1 in June 2020 with Scotty McCreery's In Between, a song that enjoyed the second greatest ascent to the top in the Billboard Country Airplays chart's 30-year history. In addition to her writing talent, Jessi is also one of the finest female vocalists in Nashville. In 2020, she released her 3rd album, Decatur County Red. Inspired by a cabin in the county's Tennessee River, the album finds Jessi at her most honest and vulnerable, looking back on her humble Tennessee roots and tracing her remarkable journey through heartbreak and joy, pain and reconciliation, disappointment, and triumph. I had the pleasure of seeing Jessi perform down in Nashville a few months ago. She's an amazing performer and an incredible writer, and I'm delighted to have her on the show. Welcome, Jessi, and thanks so much for joining us on Life Excellence.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jessi, music is such an important part of people's lives and an important part of our world. I know for me, and I suspect for all of us, there are certain songs that mark either events or seasons in our lives, and there's so much emotion packed into music. That line in your bio, tracing her journey through heartbreak and joy, pain and reconciliation, disappointment and triumph, shows us how meaningful and personal music can be. I'm guessing that you were influenced by music at an early age. Tell us about the role music played in your life growing up and how that led to your becoming a singer and songwriter.
Absolutely. My life with music, I really don't remember much about life before, it's always been. But I think people would be surprised to find out that my parents were actually both artists. Like my dad's a painter, and my mom was also real handy with a paintbrush. So most people would be fascinated to know that I actually grew up not really playing music, but painting. Like I, as a child, would spend my time with my dad. In the summers, my parents were divorced when I was 3, so half my time would be with him and then her. And when I was with him, he probably didn't know what to do with a little girl, so he'd get out his paint sets and paintbrushes, and I learned to paint with him. But he also, because of that, this is around the Memphis area where I'm from, Memphis, Tennessee, and he knew a lot of the blues musicians down on Bill Street in Memphis, and he would do a lot of the art and stuff. So I can just remember going down as probably like 5 years old, 6 years old, walking this pretty rough streets of Bill Street and listening to blues music. So that's like my first, like really can see, like watching people perform. I got to meet Stevie Ray Vaughan and Albert King and B.B. King and all these blues legends. And obviously that blues music really rang true to me, kind of going through this tumultuous, dysfunctional, being an only child split between two parents. So that kind of was a refuge for me. But you have to remember, like where I'm from in Decatur County, where the record's about, it's half the side. On one side of me is Memphis, but on the other side is Nashville. And Nashville is the king of songs, country music, traditional, like gut wrenching, all those legendary songwriters like Dolly Parton and Chris Christopherson and all those people. So if we weren't going west towards Memphis, we were going east towards Nashville. And so that also became kind of a stomping ground and refuge for me to, learn from. So I would say those two places were probably my biggest like memories of music. But my dad also had, he was like a hippie from, the 60s era. So he had a stack of vinyl records. And I can just remember going through those records at a really young age. Like, and now that I have kids, I always think about them. Like, I was such a weird kid, but I was an only child and I was around a lot of adults. So for me, like, I was devouring music, not just country music. All like people like Janis Joplin and all of his, that kind of music from the 60s, but also, Earl Scruggs, bluegrass, or Aretha Franklin, Bill Withers. I mean, I could sit here and name all day that stack of records, but that was my Bible. Those records were kind of started my encyclopedic knowledge of songs and musicians and songwriters and artists. So by the time I was probably 10 or 11, I was well versed in a lot of types of music.
So the way you're describing your childhood, I don't think that's all that unusual. And again, certainly we're all exposed to music. But what is unusual is to take that upbringing, to take that background in music and that love for music that if you didn't have it really early on, definitely got developed over time. And so how did that lead to even the thought of becoming an artist or writing songs?
Yeah, I mean, it really didn't cross my mind. The way I was raised was very simple, blue collar. My granddaddy was a carpenter. My, mom was a secretary. People in my family, some went to college but got trade or had trades. So it wasn't an option. I knew that I was an artistic kid. Like by a young age, everybody knew, I was not gonna probably be academic. So in my mind, I thought I'd probably be an art teacher, a hairdresser, something creative in a small town. But I'm sure today we'll talk a lot about fate or planets aligning or God or whatever, however you want to slice it. But when my mom remarried, she remarried someone that got uh, moved from for his work actually to a town outside of Nashville. And I really think that move was so important because then I had Nashville in my backyard and I could dream. The dream was big, but it was closer,
Mm-hmm.
it was tangible. And so I would say, really, to be honest, when I graduated high school, all of my friends kind of knew what they were going to do. Everyone scattered and went to college. And I went to college, just kind of kicked around for several years. I was there for 4 years without even picking a major. I just did not know what to do. There was no major for songwriting, or I wasn't a vocalist, like, a classical trained vocalist.
Yeah.
So I was just puttering around, just really honing my craft. Though I was playing in bands and I was writing songs on the side and doing all those things to get ready for the big move, which was to move here.
And so what led up to the big move? So you were writing, you were
Yeah, just
it sounds
work.
like fumbling around college trying to figure out what to do, but it sounds too like as all that was happening, you were the music
Yeah.
side of you is evolving. So what tipped the scale and caused you to say, you know what, I'm moving to Nashville, if that was the move, or whatever move you made that sort of put the stake in the ground and said, hey, I'm going to try and do this for a living?
It's a great story, actually. I had so many different jobs, Subway or the car auction or whatever. I was, working my way through college. So I always had a strong work ethic, no matter what I did, whatever I put myself into. But I also, that paid the bills, but then I would go and play in these bands, So being a singer, I could sing harmony with a bluegrass band or a blues band, or I had I was in a 12-piece kind of like big band with like 3 girl background singers. So I did all that. And you can imagine me strolling into class, my what should be my junior year, my senior year. I mean, I think my professors would just look at me and like, bless this girl's heart, she's working all night, she's working 2-day jobs and these gigs. And still doesn't even know what she wants to do. But I had such an appetite for learning. That's what's crazy. To be someone that's not academic or, book smart, if you will. I've always had a strong appetite for knowledge. What obviously music, the big one. So to answer your question, even though I didn't really have the job of being a songwriter, I treated it like a job. When I got off my other jobs, I sat down and I studied more songs. I wrote more songs. I made phone calls. I researched. I just knew that no one was going to help me do this. It was something that I was going to have to do on my own. And kind of the final story with what really tipped the scales was I went into class. It was an audio engineering kind of class, and that the professor called me to. He's like, "I'm going to see you after class." So I thought, "Oh boy, I mean, this is it. I'm failed. I mean, it's over." And I'll never forget just the look in his eyes. He was like, "Jessi, I've never said this to a student. I don't know how you're going to take this, but I think you need to quit college." And I was just like stunned. I mean, we are mid semester, it's like, what? He's like, "You need to quit." He's like, this is holding you back. Like, we're at a point now where school is not going to help you. You actually have to go there. And I slept on it and thought about it for a couple of days, and I just thought, gosh, he's just so right. There's no way this piece of paper is going to help my journey. And I'd kind of learned everything I needed to learn from college.
Yeah. Do you feel like he gave you permission
Mm-hmm.
to
Absolutely.
formalize that and make you jump?
Yeah, I absolutely do. I think that was the nudge, because I can be pretty loyal, committed to something, and it was the permission.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it was crazy how quickly, once I got here, things started just falling in place immediately. It's like all that legwork that I had done paid off quick.
Tell us more about that. So what happened?
Yeah. So you have to understand my headspace. When I moved here, it wasn't just to write hit songs, because in my mind, I was just feeling lucky to do anything in the music business. I knew that I had some kind of talent, some kind of gift, but if that made me a backup singer, a recording artist, a songwriter, and what we call demo singers, people that go in and demonstrate the song for the songwriters, for them to pitch the songs, I was like, I'll do any of that. And so I would just, please just let me quit Subway. I'll do whatever. So when I got here, I auditioned for a Reba McEntire backup singing gig, because in college, backup singing was one of my main ways to perform. So I ended up not getting the job because I'm not a dancer, and at that time she was having a lot of singing and dancing. So I was actually there in the rehearsal hall where she had all of her auditions, and a guy came up to me, and he could tell I was down. I was telling him, why I was there, and he said, "Yeah, I didn't get the job." And he was like, "Well, actually, I'm looking for a backup singer too, and I really would love someone that's kind of like an Emmylou Harris type." Like, the way he described the singer, it was just like, that's me, So sure enough, I went and auditioned on the spot, and talk about whirlwind dream come true. I was playing the Grand Ole Opry with him 2 nights later. I was on a tour bus to Beaumont on the third day, and I was 20, maybe 20 years old. So it's either 20 or 21, but it was just literally, Cinderella story.
That's awesome. And so fast forward a little bit, I'd like to talk about songwriting, and we'll come back to some specific songs and talk about performing too. But let's talk about the actual craft of songwriting. It fascinates me, the actual work that goes into it. You mentioned jumping on the tour bus 2 days after you audition. I have this vision, Jessi, of you driving down the road in the back of a tour bus, looking out the window, kind of reminiscing about your life, and then putting words to paper and cranking out a song like Damn Country Music. Now, I'm sure some songs get written like that, but I know most don't. So share with us the reality of how songwriting works. I know today you were writing, and so maybe you can
Yeah,
talk about today. But when do you write? Where? With whom? Tell us about a typical work day or work week for you.
absolutely. I'm going to describe the more Nashville songwriting way because when I've written in London or Los Angeles, there's definitely a different flow. But I consider myself a Nashville staff songwriter, meaning I work for a company. I have pitch sheets. I know exactly what artists are looking for, and my job is to deliver a song for them. That's my what I consider like 80% of my work life. So, believe it or not, a lot of people think we're, rolling out at 2 o'clock after yoga and, maybe having some marijuana and whiskey and, you know, pontificating and reading books and then writing. And I wish it was that loose and fun, but it's actually very regimented. A typical day for me is well, obviously I have kids, so my morning is very busy. But I know on my calendar weeks and months in advance everyone that I'm going to write with. And I have a publisher that is strategic in finding who's going to be cutting. Kenny Chesney, well, we need Jessi to write with so and so and so and so. Like they're very strategic, and I could never do all that. That's why I have a publisher. It's kind of like my manager. So when I get there, I could have several different types of co-writer. I could have, like today, I had an artist that makes records and is a great songwriter themselves. And so my job is to help deliver what they're looking for on their record. Are they missing a ballad? Or they need a show opener? So that's my job there. I also write with just songwriters, like just people just like me. And we sit around and we go, man, I've got this great title. And someone might say, hey, I heard Tim McGraw is looking for something kind of like that. There's a lot of thinking about how we can get this song because placement's everything. We all have thousands of songs sitting in vaults, so our job is to try to hit a bullseye every day. And then the third way is probably a little closer to what you imagine. So I would say the least way I write is I might sit at the piano by myself after I take the kids to school, or I might sit with my guitar and just free think, free write, sing, play, channel something. But typically I don't have as much time to finish a song like that. So what I love about those are they're just little snippets of ideas that I can then take into one of those two writing styles.
So going back to
Yeah.
the working for the publisher, that sounds very formulaic to me. And can you tell us more about that? So on an album, for example, and I know I guess vinyls are back, but when I was growing up,
Yeah.
there were actual albums. But whatever that looks like, is there a structure, a certain formula? Like I've heard people talk about TV sitcoms, and they're 23 minutes. And if you really went through and analyzed every single sitcom, you would see that at the 5 minute point, it does this, at the 10-minute point, it
Wow.
does that, at the 20-minute point, it does this. And I know it's not, the songs aren't that formulaic, but in terms of the layout of the album, is it like we need two ballads and one fast song and one honky tonk at the end? Or
Yeah.
um,
I think that there probably is. Every artist is different. Um, but I would definitely say, you don't want a ballad heavy record or too much tempo. I mean, you want range. I would think for an artist, you want a lot of range. But, imagine we're trying to basically put words in an artist's mouth. And that's half of our battle is like, would Blake Shelton say blue truck or would he say black truck? Would he sing about his dad or would he not? Like, what? We don't know. That's why when you get to write with the artist, it's just so much easier. But I will say that the songs that I've had success with are generally not as pinpointed as I'm talking about. like a song like "I Drive Your Truck," that came from a real story, real emotions. We could have overthought that. We could have thought, gosh, can we say "Go Army" in it, or should we say, like all these details? But that was a song that we were writing for just pure joy, and almost like it had to come out. And then the artist will pick, whoever it resonates for. But I would say what all artists are looking for, and one of the hardest things to pull off as a songwriter, is writing something original, something really special, something that no one said before. I mean, those are just a handful of times you get those in your career. It's very, we're all just chasing that.
It's very difficult. And when you look at the stereotype of country music and the type of things that are sung about it, it probably becomes even more difficult to make that original. I guess there are different ways to do that. It's not necessarily the topic or the theme or the words. Sometimes it can be the melody, the, the
Right.
the song itself that's just catchy. Um,
Exactly. We want like lightning in a bottle. You want special. You want something that just rings true for so many people. And they're hard. Those just special ideas. And that's what's great about co-writing, is that I might, not have anything that day, but my co-writer might have a title that they don't think is anything. The way I hear it is just different, and a light bulb goes off, or vice versa. So the collaboration is really what makes, I think, Nashville special as a songwriting community.
So when I hear you talk about the difficulty of making it unique, making it special, coming up with something different, and then I go down to Nashville along Broadway and go from bar to bar to bar, and what strikes me there is there's so much talent, and I think because it's so condensed, it's so packed on Broadway, but literally every door that you go to you hear really good music, and some's better than others, but there's a lot of the point is there's a lot of talent down there. There's a lot of artist talent, and I'm sure behind the scenes there's a lot of songwriter talent too. So what are the qualities that it takes to be successful in your field? It just seems like such an incredibly difficult business. So the people who are successful like you, what are you doing that other people aren't doing?
That's a great question, because so many people reach out and they want this, like, what's the magic, what's the one thing? And I think it's a lot of things. I think the very, very, if I had to pick a characteristic, like number one, it would be thick skin, or maybe perseverance. This is a town where, um, you can just quit today and someone will fill your spot. Like I hate to not make it sound like they're special, but it's just, there are just so many people moving here, and the talent. You got to imagine the people that are here were the best in their little town. So that's good. I mean, there's some great people that came out of a little town. So, but it's the best of the best, and everybody's here. So you have to have resilience and perseverance. So that would, there's so many times I almost quit. I mean, we could have a whole other podcast episode about, me thinking I was going to quit, and we're even talking about quitting. But um, I would say that's number one. Number two is work ethic, just true grind, because it really is a game of numbers, like odds, like, or at least this is all for me. There was a wonderful songwriter named Hugh Prestwood that wrote some huge songs. He only wrote like 10 songs in a year, and he got them all cut. So there are those songwriters, but I would say for someone like me, it's playing the odds. It's writing, and then something just pops, and then you might have a run of songs. But I like to keep my pencil sharpened, I call it. I like to just stay sharp, and I look at it as a day job, like very blue collar. I clock in, I clock out. So that to me has worked. What other characteristics? I think staying true to yourself and being authentic, because it's real tempting in this town to go, oh, well, so and so's doing great with honky tonk songs. I'm just going to go write a bunch of those. Or, oh man, they're doing so awesome doing wedding songs. I'm gonna go do that. Like, I think if you chase things, you never really find like what your gift is or what you're gonna bring to Nashville, and as a songwriter. So staying true to who you are, and then I would say lastly, just being fluid, like not being too rigid. Like, I went through a phase where I didn't want to write with other females only because I so enjoy writing songs for men. I mean, it's genuine. I get giddy writing a song for a man. When I write for a female, I'm always like, oh, I don't know, you know. But like this year, I've reworked some things. I've opened my heart and my mind with it, and already met some incredible women that I'm writing with. So I think it's just not getting rigid, and those would be my top.
You brought up something, and I was smiling because about an hour ago I was listening to, and I've listened to the whole Decatur County Red
Red,
album,
yeah.
and all three of your albums actually. But I was listening about an hour ago to I Drive Your Truck, and I actually had the thought because I was thinking about how you write songs. And I mean, it seems like I heard a speaker, he was talking about stories, and he said the best stories are your own stories. He said you can pull stories that you hear about, or you can read about stories and you can incorporate those into your speeches. But the best stories are your stories, because they're the ones that you know the best, and you know the details. And so I was thinking about that as I was listening to I Drive Your Truck, and I had that exact thought. You said you like to write songs for men, and you were singing the song, and I didn't listen to the version by Lee Brice, but I was just wondering, is that do you write songs for men or for women, or does it evolve into that? How does that work? I find that fascinating
Yeah, I really,
because I just couldn't imagine you driving that truck around like that. And or
yeah,
maybe you did. I'm
yeah, it's weird to me that I guess maybe I should probably talk to an actor friend about this sometime, because in my mind I'm kind of acting. Like, I'm seeing a story. Like the second someone says, like for example, I Drive Your Truck, she said that title, immediately I reached to a memory that I had, which was my grandmother. After my granddaddy passed away, she kept his truck parked in the garage, and like it was in mint condition to the way he left it for years. And I would go and like sit in his truck, and I could still smell him and feel him. And so immediately I went there. And so I find that if I can connect something that I've lived or felt, then we're off to the races. Where I struggle, a hard day for me is when I have nothing to really offer, you know, I'm just rhyming words basically. So I would say the connection immediate is a pretty immediate for me when I get an idea going. But for example, a lot of people don't know this. I don't think I've ever told anybody this in a podcast, but actually the climb was written from a male point of view. You know, you hear a 15-year-old Miley Cyrus sing it, but when we wrote it, I absolutely saw a guy. I saw like the struggle of this guy in my mind, you know, when we're writing it. And my co-writer, John Mabe, is obviously a male, so he was singing it. So it's great when a song can transcend gender and just be, it could go to, you know, any age group, any um, female or male. But I definitely, I don't know why. Maybe it's just if I was an actor, I probably would want to be a male actor, and just the kinds of characters. There's just the rough, the invulnerable. Um, I don't know. It's just more my nature, kind of being a tomboy. But I do love to write songs for men, and now that we have so many amazing women in our format that are coming through, then I'm that are kind of like that as well. I'm having so much joy writing with them.
So with the climb, it's interesting that you say that that was written for a man, because I really thought that that was, and certainly if it wasn't written this way, it applies, and sort of lays over what was going through your life at the time, or what's gone through your life at different times. And I guess maybe that's why it's such a great song, is we can all apply that to our lives. But I really thought when I read about you and when I read about the climb, that was something, one of those situations where whether you were sort of writing to order, so to speak, or you wrote it, that was a reflection of an actual experience that you were either going through at the time or had gone through. Can you tell us more about that? That's such a great song.
Absolutely. Well, we mentioned it earlier about those moments that you want to quit, and that's one of them. I had been went from being a backup singer to songwriter, publishing deal, then to a record deal. That it's like a pretty long, hard journey. We're talking about 7 or 8 years worth of. I talked about the Cinderella story moving to Nashville, but then I got hit pretty hard with the realities of how gut wrenching this town can be. You have to hear a lot of no's to get one yes. And I had just kind of a rocky road as an artist for whatever reason. I just couldn't get any traction at radio, and I was seeing the writing on the wall. And sure enough, lost my record deal and publishing deal, and pretty much was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was approaching 30, and my husband, or at the time, my boyfriend, he is a great songwriter, and he had just won Song of the Year for a song called Whiskey Lullaby. And I just remember thinking, you know what? I've given this town a good run. I've worked hard, and he's having all this wonderful success. Maybe we should get married. I know I want to be a mom. Like, I could stay home. I'm just thinking that. So when I went in to write The Climb that day, which I didn't know I was going to write The Climb, it was just another day. Me and John Mabe, who was also kind of an underdog, he had just started writing songs. So we're both underdogs, both kind of scrapper types. When we wrote that song, we didn't think anything, it was just like another song that will be vaulted. And sure enough, it was like when we finished it, I just remember thinking, this is really special. And I don't know why or how. And I was at a point of giving up. But if you listen to those words, you can hear how it really is self-help therapy to myself. But I didn't even know that. And then it was 2 years later that I actually did have a child, my daughter, and the song was coming out literally on the television for the President Obama's inauguration the night that I was in the hospital delivering her. So you just kind of can't make that stuff up.
Yeah.
It's just full circle.
Oh, that's a great story. So tell us about how it seems like you just never really know. I imagine there are
Yeah.
times that you go in a room with a co-writer, or you go in a room with an artist, and you at the end of that session, you really feel like you've nailed it, that you have something truly special. And then I'm sure, like the climb, there are other times that um, where you're working, you're producing, I have a song, time to punch out for the day, but it's not going to go anywhere, and then it becomes Hannah Montana huge. I remember another songwriter talking about that same notion. I think it was Josh Keir, who
Just here. Yeah.
and he was telling a story about how he had gotten together with a band, and they were going in to write a song, and they wrote the song, and it was good, and everybody was happy with it, and they had a little bit of extra time left, and just they had been working on something else, or somebody had an idea for something else, and they wrote that kind of as an afterthought, and that second one was the one that ended up being
Yeah.
the huge hit. So how does that all play out? How do you know?
It's
Or when do you
crazy that
know?
we don't. I know it's crazy that we don't know. I mean, that just shows you how twisted and is it magical? Is it, I don't know the words. It's like it's just like art, it's the eye of the beholder. So like you just don't know when a song's going to resonate like that. We might think, oh, we rang the bell. Like I can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh my God, I can't write a better song than that one. And then you hear crickets, like nothing. Nobody likes it. Um, But I will say, the longer I do this and have done this, I do feel like my judgment is pretty, like I can kind of tell, like this is special, this is important. Um, but it's just, it's magic. I don't know how to, what else to say other than it's just kind of a mystery for me still.
Well, there are obviously very talented people in Nashville, if we're talking about the country genre, but really beyond that in music, who are have the skill of being able to sort of determine songs that are going to do well, I guess. And so you do that on some level as a songwriter, and then maybe you show it to an artist, or an artist here, artist gets a call from somebody that says, "Hey, you have to listen to this. I think this would be great for you." And they agree it's great, and then they record it. But then you have the finicky public, and it seems like that's really the wild card, that you
Yeah,
could have the greatest song ever written, and you and all of your writer friends agree
yeah,
that it's the greatest song ever written, and then you get a bunch of artists in a room, and they're fighting over who's going to record it
yeah,
because it's so great, and then somebody records it, and it's another song that gets produced. And I mean, there are, the number, there are hundreds or thousands of songs, even the songs that get recorded, and not all of them end up number one, obviously.
yeah, totally. Yeah, we never know, and a lot of it has to do with timing, um, luck, or it's the this is they're big machines, Sony, Warner Brothers. Like we're talking about big um, record labels with a lot of artists, So I've just been fortunate that like everything aligned, But I could tell you so many songs that are buried on records that I think are just as special as The Climb or I Drive Your Truck, maybe even more special. But the artists, they only get certain amount of songs that they can release to radio, which is when y'all would ever hear them. And so those slots are just, coveted. To get a single is really the way we get paid. And so it's, it could be that there's those songs that are out there, they're just not, you know, they haven't been released to the masses. So
Back to the craft of writing for just a second. So one
yeah,
thing you and I have in common, you might not know this, is that we're both writers. So, although I have had the unique opportunity to take part in the process of writing a country song, which was actually around the time that I saw you in that private concert, and that's what led to our
right.
connecting. But usually I write articles and books in the success and personal development genre. So, very different for the most part than country music. But as a writer, I know that sometimes words flow almost effortlessly, and much of the time it's not quite that easy. Share your thoughts on that, Jessi. How does that play out
Yeah.
as you're writing songs, and help us to understand more about that for you?
I like to think of it as some days I play ping pong and some days I play chess. So my favorite's ping pong. There's nothing better than collaborating with someone and, they say something that makes me think of something. Then, we're back and forth. Um, that is probably, my favorite, just because I'm high energy. I love throwing paint at the canvas, but I also love to then fine tune. That's when chess comes in, where I'm okay. Let's go back. Let's look, make sure all this is right, and I think that's part of my tool belt. But I would just say that, uh, as you just described it. It's like sometimes there's like this channel that's just open, and it's just pouring out, and then it's almost like then it just stops and it's over, and you're just like, why? What did I do that day? How do I get back to that? But I think that's why I was saying earlier, my method as a songwriter, I'm not sure what yours is like as a writer, but that's why I write so much. I've learned that the more I write, the better I write. It's just like an exercise, like going to the gym for me. Um, Where I have trouble is if I get too distracted and lost, and too much downtime kind of keeps, I'll meander off into something else. So I think it's just sometimes the flow's there, but my husband always says, like, I work hard, play hard. Like, I'm the person that will put in, 50 hours a week, no problem, 60 hours, just bam, bam, bam. But then when I go to the beach, it's like, you don't even want to talk to me about songs. Like, there's not a guitar in sight. I don't even listen to music. I listen to podcasts like yourself.
When you're writing with other people, are there times when you get stuck? So you hit that ping
Yes.
pong ball and it doesn't come back and you're
Yes.
sort of looking and then
Yes.
you're not sure where you're at. How do you work through that? That
Oh,
seems
it's
awkward if you're
brutal.
sitting in a room with one or two other people and nobody's saying, that awkward silence that
Oh,
goes
yeah.
on for minutes or maybe longer. How do you
Yeah.
work through that?
Yesterday that happened, actually. It was um, great title. The guy had a great title. Me and the other co-writer, we saw it. I started spouting out. The first verse just kind of came out. The chorus was getting written, and here it's time. That just came out so easy. Now it's time to write the second verse. I mean, it's just like the first. You just knew words. It shouldn't be that hard. And oh my gosh, like, that first part took an hour. Just trying to get that second verse took like 3.5. You're like,
Wow.
and then you just get just crazy. You're just foggy, and the goal line is just so far and far away, and your judgment, and then you're like, nothing sounds good, and then this person might pick up a guitar and be like, oh, what about this? We'll ride that for a minute and then stall out, and then someone ride that one. It's just to the point where you finally just say, I don't think we're going to get it today. So what we do is we put that piece down, and we like to get like fresh look at it. So I've already just today seen the email that came through about rescheduling. So we'll try to find a morning or an afternoon, because we're all so booked that we have to find these little windows of time where we'll get back together. And I think you'd be surprised how quickly that second verse will likely get written, because we'll have a new perspective, fresh view on it.
Does that ever come to you on the beach, even though in spite of your desire to not have it just jump into your mind?
I think it's more bizarre times. Like, I can't tell you how. There's a funny, like, so I have voice memos. This is one of my favorite apps that I use as a songwriter. But I mean, there's literally a voice memo of me talking in an elevator, saying these words as I'm walking my daughter into her pediatrician appointment. I'm not kidding. Like, you hear the doctor say, "Oh, hi, look, you look so bad," and I'm literally spouting out a whole first verse. Like, it's crazy. I mean, I get titles, thoughts, ideas, music. I mean, obviously the shower, obviously driving my car, things like that. But then there's just these, like, literally, I've been in a restaurant talking to a girlfriend, and she'll say something, and I'm just like, oh my God, that's a song. And I have to excuse myself, go to the restroom or something, and just get it out, because I've learned that those are all little gifts. They're just little, they're not all great, but you just never know. It's like one tiny little piece can change your life, really, as a songwriter. It's just somehow we're just pulling out, this gold.
Sure. And you really need to capture it right at the moment, don't
Right
you?
there. Yeah.
If you don't get it then, it's gone. Whether it's in a dream and you wake up, or at the pediatrician, or at the restaurant.
Yeah.
I carry Post-it notes. I like Post-it notes,
Post-it notes. Yeah.
but the
And I think that sometimes it's just good to sit at the piano. I just don't get to do this a lot, but if I sit there and just, like, try to be quiet and just start playing, or I'm on my guitar, either way, and just singing and playing. And I love that I don't pressure myself to finish it. I don't have any desire, it's not a number game for me in that way. It's like, I'm okay if literally all I got was a line. Because in my mind, hey, that could be the one line, it could be the opening line to this guy's idea.
Yeah. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Jessi, one of the things we try to accomplish on this show is identifying success traits in specific vocations that we can then take and apply to be more successful in whatever we do. What advice do you have for our listeners and viewers about what it takes to be successful in one's chosen vocation, whatever that is, and how to approach something, especially when we truly believe that's our calling? I know you from our conversation very early in the show talking about just your background and how your your appreciation for music evolved and how you started performing and writing. And I get the sense that for you it's more than a job, even though on a day to day, week to week, month to month, year to year basis, it really is a job. Um, but that it's more than that for you, that you feel really called to this. And so, what advice do you have for people around that who feel like they're really called to something? Maybe they're in the position that you were in when you were still living in Decatur County, or
Yeah, yeah, West Tennessee. Yeah, man, I want to for a second imagine not being a songwriter. If you had a dream of doing anything, like what's success? I think dedication. That's the word that I'm seeing right now. It's just like a true dedication to whatever it takes. I mean, it's like, what does it take to achieve this? And that might be different. Maybe you have to figure out what that is. What are those two? I always use the tool belt analogy, I guess, because I grew up around a carpenter. But know your tool belt. Like I know I have a hammer and I have this and this, but I know how to keep them sharp and I know how to use them and when to use them. But I do think that you can get distracted so quickly by trying to use other people's tools and other people's gifts. And, I have so many songwriters that reach out and they think, gosh, if I could just get in the room with with a hit songwriter, I'll write a hit. But it really doesn't necessarily happen like that. Maybe you have to find your group, that are on your level and you guys become the next hit songwriters. And so I think just like that dedication to your craft, learn as much as you can learn, ask questions, dare to be stupid, dare to fail. I just really am all about work ethic. That's kind of what's worked for me is just not giving up. Now I didn't have a backup plan. I didn't have a college degree. So for me, there was no other option, but I think you'd see that in thread in most of my life is just putting in the work.
you talked earlier about times when you wanted to quit, and maybe it's happened various times. Sometimes it was a more stronger tug than others, but share with our listeners and viewers what to do when they're in that situation. So you were pretty close to that, it sounds like,
Yeah.
and yet you didn't. You kept going, and what caused? Where did you reach for that? The
Yeah.
energy and the support and the kind of the springboard to keep going.
Yeah. I call it grit. It's like something just, I think it's one of those people where I get kicked down and I doubt myself. And I even have to say the words like, I think I want to quit. Like it has to come out, even though in my soul knows it's not possible, but I have to say it and almost wallow in it for a minute and just kind of go there. But for me, what happens is I don't like that feeling. I don't like to be stricken with self doubt. And something inside of me just rallies. And it has to come from me. I mean, my husband can tell me, my kids can tell me, my cousins, my publisher, you're going to have a hit. You're going to come back, because I've gone through some long stretches without hits, like there's been years go by where you're like, man, I might be done. But I would say two things. This rally cry has to come from me, and I have to just, you know, get back up on my own. And then I would say the second thing that has worked now maybe two or three times for me is reinvention.
Mm.
Um, and that could be just seeing what you see as success. Like maybe your end game wasn't right, maybe that isn't logical or isn't attainable. Maybe you just need to adjust it a little more. Um, or maybe you don't need to have, maybe that end game is too much of a distraction and you need to work on what is what is my daily success. I wrote a song, it's just like changing your perspective. So I think it's just kind of, everybody's so different.
Well, and two, maybe it just wasn't meant to be, right? I think
Right.
if you can come around, that's a very difficult conclusion to come around to. So when you went to Nashville, you didn't go to Nashville to I don't think to become a great songwriter. You wanted to perform. You wanted to be an amazing performer. And by the way, you are an amazing performer. And
Thank
I
you.
don't I can't, and I've thought about this a lot. I can't for the life of me figure out, we'll talk about this on the next podcast maybe, but why some people make it and some people don't. And when you look at, I mean, Jessi, when I look at you on paper, and I mean, you're an attractive young woman. You're an incredibly talented vocalist. You have an amazing voice. I think it's I mean, I'm not an expert in anything, and certainly not in country music, but you have a great voice and a unique style. I think that it seems like that would be attractive to companies and to the public, and yet some people make it and some people don't. And so you were faced with that at some point where you had the record contract. It didn't, long story short, it didn't pan out,
Yeah.
and you had to come to terms with that. And you made lemonade out of lemons. And again, it's very difficult as you're going through it, but I really believe that if things are meant to be, then they'll happen. And sometimes we fight really, really hard to make things happen, and we're convinced that it's our calling. We're convinced that it's what we're meant to do, and yet the doors just don't open for that.
Absolutely. That's really where faith comes in for me. I could not have dreamed this, you know, this life or this career, and I'm still just amazed by um, how God works in my life and where, if I'd been a recording artist, like maybe you envisioned or I envisioned at one point, I would not have written I Drive Your Truck. I wouldn't have had time. I wouldn't have written The Climb because I wouldn't have had the struggle. I can't tell you how many times I feel like there's a little voice inside of me saying, like, I got you. All you've got to do is just work hard and be you and be authentic. I've got this. And so my faith really kind of at the end of the day, it's strong as to I don't have the plan. I don't know the plan. All I know is, to put one step forward every day and just do my best. So that's kind of what I lean on.
So he's driving the truck.
Absolutely. And if I can let go and not have these, banner moments that I see that I want, maybe there's going to be even better, and bigger. Like I went through a phase of wanting an Oscar. I mean, it sounds crazy, but as a songwriter, it's hard to do. And it's really, I got really close to it with The Climb. So once I tasted it, I was like, man, that would be so cool. I'm a huge movie lover too. People that know me know how much I love movies. I love film and television. I would love to write an Oscar winning song. And I fixated on that for a couple of years and got distracted chasing things that just didn't matter. And, who knows? I might get that Oscar, but it won't probably be doing it like that. It'll probably come from a way that I was just writing songs, that I believed in, and I let God do the rest of the work.
That's a great approach. What do you love most about what you do, Jessi? What inspires you to write songs and to perform music?
Oh man, I love so much about it. I think that I love that every day is different. I'm very, I could get bored quickly if I had a job that was too same, same, same. So every day, like today, I wrote with a guy from Texas. He's a Texas artist. Like Monday, I was with a new, like kind of Georgia boy. I'm writing with females, males, bands. It's just every day is so different. So I love that's probably my favorite thing about my job. Um, what else? I do love to perform. I love to sing, but my true love is to start with a blank piece of paper, just like you do as a writer, and look up 3 or 4, 5, 6 hours later and go, there's a song. A whole song has just been written. And to hear it on the way home, and you listen to the work tape, you're like, God, I think we nailed it, and then the next morning, you listen to it again and it's just getting better. And um, that joy before someone said, this is way before someone says no. This is when you still think it's amazing.
Still
That
when
little
you're in
sweet,
the irrational
yeah,
exuberance phase, right?
exactly. And you're just, you're texting your co-writers like, yeah, I played it for my wife last night. They love it too. You're just high. It is a high. Songs for me can be a high. And especially when I know I nailed it. Like every word's perfect. Every line's perfect. There's so much gratification in that for me. And I'll be honest, sometimes it's okay if someone didn't like it. It's just, I love it.
I was just going to say that. I was going to suggest that oftentimes that's probably enough, that you're satisfied with the level of with the quality of what you produced, whether that gets publicly acclaimed or not. And that's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. It's a maturity, I think too, to that you're able to get to that point and find joy in what you do, and not have somebody else determine the joy, I guess, based on the results that get created. Not that you wouldn't love another number one hit.
Absolutely. Oh
About
yeah.
that.
But I mean, you just never know. I have a song on the chart right now that I wrote in 2018. I mean, it's such a long, we were asking earlier about the characteristics that you need. I would say patience. I did not say that, and I should have, because it is such a game of waiting. So many of my songs are 5 years old, 6 years old. I mean, my Scotty McCreery song that you mentioned, that was 6 years old when it came out.
Wow.
I'd forgotten about that song. That was long gone. That's 2 catalogs ago. So you do have to have a lot of patience.
Jessi, you've worked with a number of amazing artists, including all the ones that we talked about, Blake Shelton and Miley Cyrus, but also others like Dierks Bentley, Miranda Lambert, Little Big Town, Trisha Yearwood, and many others. Who have you enjoyed working with the most? And then secondly, if you could choose an artist to record your next number one hit, who would it be?
Ooh.
And this
Okay.
is just
Wow.
between you and me. I won't tell anybody, I promise.
Okay, right. Let's see. Okay. I just gonna go with my gut here. There's so many artists that I've enjoyed, but I've just enjoyed the like years of time with Blake Shelton. We came to town around the same time. Um, we have a love language of communication. I don't want to call it, but the songs I write, he responds like we get each other. Even after having our first two number ones together that I wrote, he recorded. He then called me to write for Angry Birds, which is the animated movie. So, and then he's called me with a beautiful gospel melody that he had dreamed the night before, and we wrote it for his record. I think 2 records ago, a song called "Save Your Shadow." He has just entrusted me and just shared with me pieces of his soul and his story, and I've gotten to be a part of his career. I have a lot of songs on a lot of people's records, but just to have that full several chapters, like a long time span with someone, that's really special to me. And there's a lot of artists that don't remain so faithful to a writer. So I would say Blake is probably my favorite in that way.
Well,
And then my next number one, I mean, I hope the songs that I have on the chart right now go number one, but do you want like just a random person to record my song?
yeah, absolutely. If you could pick, if I had a magic wand and could wave it and said, I can give you anybody to record your next number one song, who would you like it to be?
It'd be a collaboration with Dolly Parton. Can you hear me?
I can.
There you are.
Yeah.
Dolly Parton would she would sing it. And I would love for Eric Church to be on there, and I would love Miranda or anybody. Really, just Dolly. I mean, if Dolly ever sang one of my songs, I don't know that there's any greater reward. She's one of the greatest songwriters of all time.
Absolutely. Then you could be done, huh? Just mic drop,
Oh yeah, I mean,
drop your pen.
drop the mic. Yeah, it's over. Yeah, I'll go with Dolly. Doesn't get much better than that.
Oh, that's awesome. Jessi, thank you so much for being on the show today. Your music is amazing, but I have to tell you, I'm even more inspired by you and your story and all the great information that you've shared today. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
I hope so. I hope I've been of help a little bit, but thank you so much for asking such great questions.
It's been great having you on the show. And for our listeners and viewers, thanks for tuning in to Life Excellence. If you enjoyed the show today with singer and songwriter Jessi Alexander, then hit the subscribe button and subscribe to the Life Excellence podcast or to our YouTube channel. Also, if you're not already following me on Instagram, you can find me at Brian Bartes. That's at BRIANE like Edward, BARTES. Until next time, dream big dreams and make each day your masterpiece.